What's going on, people? How's everybody doing this evening? It's JB Harrison, the Mind Your Business podcast, and we've got another episode, another edition. Just want to say good evening and welcome. For those of you that this might be your first time catching the show. Just want to say, hey, how you doing? And appreciate you just taking the time out to come hang out with us and getting some free game. And then for those of you who are here on the regular, hey, all I'm gonna say is what's up. Thank y'all for coming back. All right. Last week was our 20th episode, and we had Mr. Adam Coleman on the show, and I think we did really good for our 20th. Shout outs to him. We've been kind of talking, going back and forth about a couple things that we're working on, and so I want you guys to stay tuned for that. But coming up this evening, I have a young lady by the name of Diane Wesh, and she has a company called Got Blacklisted. And we're going to find out some more about that, what exactly it is, what she does, and even with that, just to have the candid conversations that we do here. The conversations we have here on the show. We always try to get into business so we can find out what it is that you can do in order to get to the place to where you're trying to go. And, we try to get that free game. So let's see. Let me see if we can get her here. I know she's here. Miss Diane Wesh. How you doing this evening?
Good. How are you doing? Thank you again for having me.
Oh, listen, I'm doing well, and I appreciate you for hanging out with us this evening. You're a world traveler as well, because I think last time when I emailed you were saying, hey, I'm about to go out of the country or something, and I'll catch you when I get back. So we're going to start. What exactly do you do, and what is Got Blacklisted?
Okay. Well, essentially, I'm a multidimensional artist. So, of course, being a Black artist, for us, we basically have to know how to do a range of things so we can kind of get ahead. So, a lot of my expertise lies in creative direction, journalism, PR, marketing, and curating a lot of events. And Got Blacklisted, CEO and founder of that. And it basically transformed from being a digital directory to a boutique arts and entertainment agency. So essentially, I offer minor representation for Black artists and entertainers. I curate all my own events and create paid opportunity for Black artists.
So, getting paid for events for Black
Yeah.
artists. So, with what you do, how do you pick and choose the artists that you may necessarily bring onto your stable? I guess you could say, or your roster.
Ooh, well, I'm a silent observer. So I definitely would say, going out to a lot, being really active and involved in the community, you can tell who's out here doing the work and who's just kind of talking about it, but not really, taking the initiative to execute. So, I have like a short list of people who I would say, oh, I'll if they ever, needed assistance, I would definitely help them out. And a lot of folks here, I'm based in Virginia Beach, Virginia, but in the seven cities, there are a lot of underground artists who've been putting in 10 plus years of work. But I always, like I said, I travel every time I come back. I see these same artists basically doing the same thing, just going to these pop-up events and, really not making that much money. And for me, it was just like, okay, how can I utilize what I've learned to help them get out of like this circle, this cycle that they're going through, like, to really help them get the coins that they deserve.
And so, what is that? And with that, what is that? So, from start to finish, what does that look like? I mean, is it a thing to where almost like you could almost say like a record label, or so back in the day they had a thing called A&Rs. And
Mhm.
what A&Rs who used to do was they would get an artist and just kind of mold them and help create them to becoming the artist, whether it was during interviews or help put records together, studio stuff. So is it kind of the same premise or is it different?
It's kind of the same, but a lot of these artists are have a, like again, they've already done the work. They already are almost experts in their craft. I think where I come in is a lot of artists can't juggle both
Mm,
art and business, right? So I come in, I say, look, you focus on your art. Let me focus on the business. Let me pitch to galleries and see if I can get you a space so you can have an exhibition. Also having skills in marketing, knowing how to target market events, and knowing who, how to like, again, really curate the space. So, for instance, I'm working with an artist right now, Chris Green. I mean, he's done the work. He's done his dues. Over 10 plus years of experience. But the thing with him is, you know, I always saw him selling just like prints. I'm just like, you need to start selling these bigger pieces, and kind of just molding him and letting him know, like, your friends aren't your target market. Like,
mm,
you really need to tap into people who want to spend thousands of dollars on art and not going from one place to another selling prints for, at a low cost.
mm, mm. And so when you're dealing with artists that are like that, not just him, what is that like? What is the pushback like? Because I know sometimes with artists or individuals, they kind of think well, they may think they know it or know what they're doing. But what is that like for you? I mean, I'm sure that there's time that you've kind of got frustrated or they've gotten frustrated. So when it comes to, hey, hey, given the advice, let's try this or let's do that. And if there's pushback, how does that work, or how do you, is it a sweet science to it, or how do you do that? How do you figure that piece out?
Well, typically I try to break it down for them. And a lot of things sometimes I have to use my own personal
Mm,
experience of, why things have to be conducted a certain way. Having played both sides of the playing field, I've been with corporate, I've seen how they move. And now I'm kind of coming to you, disseminating that information. Like, look, this is how they move. So you
mm,
got to be strategic. It's a chess move. It's like chess,
mm,
And so for me, it's almost like enlightening them. And I would say I have gained, a lot of trust from the community is because, I have receipts.
mm.
They've seen the work that I've done. So really getting pushback, more so a lot of them come to me for advice and for knowledge. So yeah.
And so so let's take it back. How did you, I know you probably from seeing some of the artists and you probably
Mhm.
seen them struggle and was like, hey, look, let's figure out something. How did you go from the inception to from what you have now? How did it grow? How did it start from what you were thinking or what you saw to what it is now?
I would say, well, my original business, it originated in New Zealand. I was doing my work holiday visa in New Zealand after the murder of George Floyd. That's when I really was like, okay, let me create something to try to help, because I kind of felt displaced, especially seeing Black Americans going through that struggle,
Mm,
and I'm safe in a in a country that actually values, the
mm,
Black life and the Black body. So I was again torn between there, and it had started as a directory, and I have a mentorship with this other founder. Um, he's actually an investor, and he was kind of telling me, look, you need to focus on one thing. Find that one thing that you really love that people are kind of struggling with. And for me, like my love, especially during COVID-19 at time, was always art and culture. And even before traveling, I always had friends that were into arts, but you always have that starving artist mentality. So I kind of just, I just did the ask, I guess. I
mm.
just said, hey, do you need help? Do you need representation? And it kind of just flowed from there.
And then what does it take, one, for people to trust your advice, your information, your expertise, and then two, how important do you think that relationship is when it comes to those two things?
I really think it's really coming correct and following through with what you say. I think that's number one. Like if, first off, just in anything, you want to gain the trust of someone. Are you gonna be a man or woman of your word? If you say you're gonna be somewhere at 11:30, you're gonna be there at 11:30, or you're gonna show up at 12 o'clock. And then on top of that, when you tell someone you're going to do something, are you going to do it, or are you going to wait 3 months and tell this person, I'm sorry, I can't show up, or I can't do it? So I think for me, it was always just showing up. It was always offering my resources and my knowledge outside of profit. So it was never like, hey, come on, come on my team, and so I can make money. Like I don't really make any money doing this. It's really just genuinely wanting to help artists. Sure, I know the money will come from my business, but really seeing your friends struggling in a way and knowing that, okay, well, I have this knowledge and I have this ability to do something, so I'm going to help out in the best way that I possibly can.
So for those, so individuals that want to start a business, want to start and they want to be an entrepreneur, um, what advice would you give them on how to start? Like how do you start? What is the first step that they need to take in order to start their own thing?
I would definitely say, don't leave like your full-time job. And this is something that, I learned from a lot of people. Don't leave your full-time job. If you really like, if you want to be an entrepreneur, I'd say first, don't get caught up in the lure of entrepreneurship because it's extremely difficult and challenging. I'm not saying you can't do it, but keep your full-time job and have this side hustle. Allow your full-time job to be your first investor. And this full-time job is going to be basically the bank for you to start that side hustle and to bring it up into becoming, maybe an entrepreneurial business that you or endeavor that you want to pursue. And I think, really find something that you're really passionate about, right? I think sometimes, again, so many people get caught up in the lure of money and they're like, oh, I can make a lot of money from this. But trust me, I've seen so many companies fail when it comes to, oh, let me make, like, I can make money from this. I can make money from this, because you're seeing now a lot of brands are falling because of like tokenism, racism, exploitation, all this stuff. So make sure like all your ducks are in a row. You really know what you want to do. And I'd say like, do everything organically. It can't be a rushed process.
And I think that's probably one of the biggest things. Even myself, I'll be honest with you.
Hmm.
Me and patience aren't friends.
Yes.
I really struggle with patience. I struggle because for me, I want them to pop right now. Like,
Now I'm going to interrupt you real quick. Let's say it did pop right now, right? Would you be ready?
I want, so I want to say yes.
Hmm.
Now, is that the honest answer? Probably not. But I want to say yeah. But I mean, you're correct. A lot of times, it's the patience that prepares us
Hmm.
for everything else. It's
Yeah.
it's that patience and the practice and getting the process in order so that when it's time for things to take off, you're prepared for it. I've had people on the show that weren't necessarily prepared for the pop.
Hmm.
They weren't, and then they suffered because of that. Whether it was a demand for merchandise or whether it was a demand for whatever their services may be, they weren't prepared for it, and then in turn they ended up losing probably a lot more than what they gained even originally. So yeah, so you're correct. That patience will cause you to be prepared for when that time does arrive. But man, it's just that process.
It is.
You
It
know that
is.
that that and that process sucks. I'll be honest with you. But just trying to navigate yourself through it, having the patience for it, and it's definitely you. It's one of those things you have to be built for. I'll say that.
Yeah.
So let's go back a little bit. So you have your company. Prior to that, what was it that you were doing, and you may still be doing? You kind of said something that you can still be quote unquote an entrepreneur and still have a full time job.
Yes. Yeah.
You can have a successful side hustle. So with you, what were you doing? What were you doing prior to starting your business, and then how did that prepare you for starting your business?
So I think if we can go back actually further, because so I never went to school for art. I graduated from law school. I was working in corporate. I was actually working in a legal office. And then from there, I traveled the world for 4 years, and I did like jobs here and there. So I did, waitressing. I actually worked for a whale watching company in Alaska. What else? And then I worked as a journalist. All like
Wait a minute. We're not just going to skip over that part. I know you thought you were going to just mention that. And wait. A whale watching company?
Yes. So I worked as a whale watching at a whale watching. It was called Kenai Fjords Tours, and I was their supervisor. But let me tell you what I learned while I was in Alaska. So I know a lot people are thinking like, "Oh my gosh, Alaska, like, are there any Black people there?"
Yeah.
I was one of the very few in a really small town called Seward, Alaska, about 2 hours out of Anchorage. Um, but I learned like it actually started everything for me. If I were to look back, because it was the first time I ever did an art event. It was the first time someone actually said yes to an idea of mine. It was the first time someone bought a piece of, because I was doing like photography at the time. It was the first time in Alaska where someone purchased a photography print of mine. And so a lot of my firsts came from taking a risk and moving to Alaska. So if I can recommend anything to any entrepreneur, is really get out of your home state. Go somewhere completely different if you can, because you'll learn so much. And that's really where I learned a lot about being an entrepreneur. Because a lot of people, you get a lot of tourists that go there, and it's a lot of travelers that go there. And so, mind you, I'm with all these travelers who are like hiking in the woods, getting, racking up sticks, carving sticks, making them into wood, going to these markets and selling them for like a lot of money. And they're using that money to keep traveling. So they taught me the game. They're like, "Yo, Diane, you could do this. Diane,
Mm,
you could do this." And of course, it's easier for them, right? But
right.
still, it's just like I'm getting bits and pieces of it. And so now, like I'm taking that knowledge, because they're making everything so
Hmm.
accessible to me, right? And so they're the ones, when I was in Alaska, they told me about the work holiday visa in New Zealand. So all this traveling I'm doing was because I was actually heavily around white people who had access to all of this information.
And we're willing to give it for free.
Exactly.
And I think a lot of times for us, and I get it to a point, but I think a lot of times for us, and that's kind of what the show is about, is to give away the free game, is to
Yes.
give the information for those that are interested or want to start a business, want to start their careers, want to be an entrepreneur. Is to have these conversations with the other entrepreneurs that so for instance, you said, hey, don't quit your day job, just get a nice successful side hustle.
Mhm.
You have some people in their brains, an entrepreneur is somebody who only works for themselves,
Yeah.
and that's all that they like. That's it. That's all they do. I had a couple on the Millers a while back, and one thing they said about being an entrepreneur wasn't even necessary. A lot of times people also think that you have to start your own business, like you have to create it.
Hmm.
You can be an entrepreneur and you can buy into a business, or you can buy a business
Yeah,
and
franchise.
and still be considered as an entrepreneur. Like you don't have to invent a business or invent something in order to be an entrepreneur. And I think a
Yes.
lot of times that people kind of get that part messed up and confused. But for you, you even made the statement: don't quit your job if you have one. Have a successful side hustle. And it means a lot because you trying to do start your own business or whatever.
Hmm.
Your money ain't running right. That can be
Yes.
very stressful, very very stressful. So if you're doing both, if you have a side hustle and a job, how do you find the balance? How do you balance that schedule and that time?
So I think when I was actually working full time, because now I transitioned to part time, but when I was doing it full time, I think it was really sacrifice. It was really kind of how bad do you want it. So on your weekends, are you working on your business, or are you going out to the clubs and partying? I was working on my business. I was fine with not being seen all the time, not going out. And so I do all my research and I work on my business then, or even after I got off my job, right? After the 9 to 5 life, then you have your 6 to 10,
Mhm.
and you're working on your business. So it's just how much are you willing to put in to try to make those gains to have a successful
And,
business.
and and I guess too, it's finding the balance
Hmm.
as well as what are you willing to sacrifice. And like you said,
Yeah.
how bad do you want it? You know, we can have that conversation and we can say a lot of things, but if we're not willing to put the work in, then it's just you running off at the mouth.
Yes.
Um, what did your resume look like in order to get that whale watching job?
Oh my God. So actually, that's actually a really great question. So I actually took off the fact that I got a law degree, took that off because sometimes you have to take some
Hmm.
things off
Oh
because they're
yeah.
gonna be like, wait, what are you doing? I took that off. I think I took off the fact that I worked at like the courthouse, and I put basically a majority of the jobs I had kind of did when I first started working. And so, and I think in my cover letter I just said, I have this really desire to kind of, go somewhere new. And it was a seasonal temporary job. But they ended up calling me, and I really prayed about it. And I'm just like, if they call me, I'm just gonna say yes. And they called me the next week and they said, can you be here in 2 weeks? And I quit. Like I left everything, and went to Alaska.
And so when you applied for the Alaska job, where were you at that time?
I was at home in Virginia Beach, Virginia. Yeah,
And
I was at
so
home.
what was that conversation like?
Oh God, with who? My parents?
Yeah, like, hey,
Oh, it
mom,
was that.
dad, I'm going to
Oh my
Alaska
God.
for a
Oh yeah,
whale watching job that pays
they
how much an hour?
like basically it actually paid like a lot less than what I was making at the time. And they just thought I was extremely crazy. Basically told me I was throwing my life away. But that's just of course I can honestly say, not to be, but sometimes your parents are the biggest killer of dreams. And I
Mm,
come from Haitian immigrants, so they really
wow.
struggle to get here. So um when it comes to like working hard and earning the dollar, that's my parents. So giving up, they felt like I was throwing away my degree, that I had wasted my money, and I could understand from their perspective, why it hurt them to see me go to Alaska.
To do a whale watching job.
Yeah.
And I guess for them it's like, what kind of future? Like,
Yeah.
and especially based on, and they probably were like, hey, my daughter's going to be this, she's going to school for this, and they're probably bragging.
Yes.
She's on her way, blah blah blah, and then all of a sudden, hey mom, dad, I'm going to Alaska for a job, and then they were probably like, well, what kind of job are you going for? Is this the
Yeah.
job? They probably like, is this the job we was waiting for? And oh yeah, she's on the way, and then all of a sudden you hit them with whale watching.
Yeah. No. Oh yes, they were not pleased at all.
Right.
They were not.
So even with that, and relationships can also be, and outside with parents or whatever, but sometimes just relationships can also be a stress factor when it comes to entrepreneurship and following your dreams. And
Mhm.
so, with that, what would you say is how important is it to have someone or people that are like-minded, people that are within your circle will support you, but then at the same time, hey, listen, if stuff sounds a little crazy, they can kind of reel you in, or at least have that conversation with you and be like, maybe you want to rethink these things before you just jump.
Yes, yes. I think it's extremely important. And fortunately for me, my sister and I had two other really close colleagues who knew me extremely well, who I really who confided in and trusted. And um, just having them in my corner with everything I was doing, yeah, it really helped me out a lot in my journey.
And then how do you find the balance with everything that you do outside of work, and then focus on the side hustle or whatever? How do you find the balance with work? If you're working, if you then you have your entrepreneurship, the business you're trying to start, and then even relationships, friends, parents, just how because a lot of times even with that, sometimes that balance can kind of get out of whack. And how do you find the balance?
Yeah. I think it's always just, putting, of course, my mental first, like my mental health, and just always incorporating self-care. Also, I always, I'm very organized and structured. So I have like calendars with everything that's going on. If I need to push things back, I push them back. I also make sure I always have times for rest.
Mm.
I think no is the most powerful tool you have. Like sometimes, someone would ask me for something and I'll say no, I'm busy, but maybe I don't really have anything on my agenda, but I just need that day to rest. I'm okay with just saying no to something.
Yeah, and I think that is also that's key. A lot of people, especially when they're starting out, they're starting their business, are afraid to say no because
Yeah.
it's one of those things to where they may miss out on an opportunity.
Mhm.
But I guess if you're suffering from sleep deprivation, then whether that opportunity comes or not, you're not gonna be able to enjoy it.
Exactly.
Because you gotta have that balance and that rest. So kind of back to where we were. Um, you had the opportunity to travel. You went to Alaska, and so at what point did you really decide, hey, I'm going to do this thing? Like I'm really going to do it, and uh, you know, regardless, I'm going to do it and make it happen.
So it actually didn't, it took a little bit. And it was actually when I went to New Zealand, like again, like I was traveling all over these states, all over these countries. And I felt confident enough in my ability to at least try. Because I don't think I could be able to live with myself if I had that regret of never trying to see if something were going to work, especially if God placed something on my heart and, and gave me that push, right? Because everyone understands like your calling. Like, and when I think about like a calling, it's just this thing that just keeps waking you up at night like, oh, you should do this, you should do this, like, maybe, listen to that and heed to it, answer it, because you never know what it's going to turn out to be. Like the business I have now, I never thought it would unravel into this. Like I said, it was just a directory I was doing with my friend during COVID-19. And then it just slowly, organically unraveled because I got myself involved with the community here. And, I actually did the grassroots work to see what they needed. And if that aligned with me and what I truly loved.
So if it's that thing that keeps you awake at night,
Yeah.
not like indigestion or heartburn, but that
Yeah.
thing that just, regardless of what you do, you just can't shake it.
Yeah. You can't shake it.
You know,
Yeah.
and even with that, when do you know when it's time?
Hmm. You know, I, that I think it's just on you. I always tell people, look, we all are so gifted. We all are artists. We all are. Like, God gave us these insane abilities that lie within us, right? Yet we live in this world that wants us to conform and comply. right? You know, you have to get this 9 to 5. You have to do this one thing. But we're good at multiple things. We just haven't really tried it out yet. And I think for me, it's just like when you have a window of opportunity, it's up to you. It's your choice.
Hmm.
Either you're gonna jump and take that risk, or you're gonna say, "Oh no, I'm too afraid,"
Right.
and then you remain the same. You know, had I not taken that trip to Alaska, I would not have a business.
Hmm.
I'll probably still be working as a clerk, you know, at a law office, which that's fine if some people want to do that. But, you know, to take that risk and to heed to that calling, you tap into certain talents that you know, it's like you unearth these certain talents
Hmm.
that you've always had within you, but you're finally kind of breaking them free.
And I guess that's, you've got to either you got to jump or be pushed.
Exactly. I like
And I guess even for me for a long time, it was, and I call it paralysis by analysis.
mm,
And my wife will tell you a lot of times I sit and I think so much about something to where it'll never happen because I'm trying to figure it out. I'm trying to figure out how to do it, how to make sure when I do it, it's done correctly. And then the other killer is, and I had somebody on the show who said this as well,
mhm,
comparison.
mm,
Because for me, if one, I'm analyzing everything, then two, I'm comparing what it is that I'm going to do or what I want to do to what somebody else may be doing, then a lot of times that may just kill your dream.
yes.
Because, well, they're already doing that, so I don't necessarily want to do it. But
Mhm,
then at the same time, it's one of those things to where sometimes you can only reach certain people with what you're doing.
yes.
Whoever's doing the same thing that you may be doing, they still can't do it like you.
Mhm,
And so it's just, like you said, you just gotta jump. Like at some point, you have to jump, and then you can't be afraid to fail.
mhm,
Because I think for some people, they're so afraid to fail that they never try.
exactly.
And it's one of those things that, well, you'll never know what you could have done or could have been because you were so afraid to even take that leap or take that chance.
Exactly. And failure is just fertile ground for growth.
Wait, say that again.
I said failure is just fertile ground for growth.
Now, is that yours or did you get that from someone else?
No, actually, I just thought of it right now while you're talking.
Oh,
I don't know. Maybe it could be something. I don't know, but
listen, hold
I
on.
was
Wait a
fertile.
minute.
It's fertile ground for growth.
Failure. Oh, I'm putting this, wait a minute.
Yeah.
Failure
Mm,
is fertile ground for growth. That's good.
yeah.
That's good. I may just use that tomorrow,
Yes.
and
Okay.
I'll make sure that you get tagged on it. But that's really that's good. That and like because one thing about it, you're going to fail. Um, I've had conversations, and I've said this on the show. I've had multiple businesses that I
Mhm,
failed at. Did I have a great time doing it? Yes. Did I learn a lot when I was doing it? Yes. Did I learn what not to do a lot? Yes, I did.
mhm,
But multiple businesses. And, but one thing about me is, for the most part, I'm not afraid to try, but it's one of those things, it's just the analyzing to almost to a fault. Because my wife's had to reel me in a whole lot because
mhm.
I'll just get out here and go after I've kind of thought some things through or whatever. But that's something is one, you've got to get out here and do it and at least try. I posted something today and on my Instagram, and it was just do it.
Mm,
But I wasn't talking about Nike at all. It was more so all the dreams that you have, all the aspirations, all your hopes. At some point, either you're going to get out here and you're going to try to see if it works, or you're going to continue to keep talking about it or and saying, hey, well, this is what it could be, or this is what I could have done.
Yes.
But it's you got to get out here and do it. You have to. So for you, let's talk about some of your successes and some of your failures.
Mm.
Um, which ones stand out the most for you?
I think which ones stand out the most, I would definitely say my failures,
Hmm.
you know, a lot of my failures. But I don't really even see them as failures.
No, because it's fertile
Yeah.
ground for growth, is what it is.
Yes, exactly. Like before this one, I started a whole nother business.
Mm,
But this business that I have now was taking the research that I use in the other business and
mm,
incorporating it in this one.
mm,
So it's like I learned so much from trying to do that first one, and also made the process less scary for me, right? Because let's be real, like, and I can ask you, right? Had you not tried those multiple businesses, would you be having this podcast right now?
no, not at all. No,
Okay, yeah.
yeah,
So
not
it's
at all.
almost like it's like a preparation in
Hmm.
itself for like that big business that's gonna
Yeah.
that's gonna help you out
Hmm.
in a way, because and it also like it gives you that confidence to kind of do more,
Yeah.
that belief in yourself that you really need. I'm sorry, I don't even know if I answered your question.
No, you could because some it's yeah, because it's one of those things to where when you start doing something and then you sit back and look at him like, yo, I'm really doing this.
Mhm.
Like and it's actually working out pretty well. Now, it may not necessarily be, for me, once again, it may not be where I want it to be right now. But the
Mhm.
fact that, and even for me, I'll be honest, being consistent is key.
Mhm.
And I'm the type of person that I'll start something and I'll get bored with it after a while. And I'll get bored, and then it's no longer fun because now it's become like a job or it's boring.
Yes.
But I can honestly say that what I'm doing now, I think that for me, the beneficial whatever to it is, the fact that I know that other people are, it's not about them tuning in and catching the show, but it's about them tuning in and get what they need in order to be ready to go on tomorrow. Or something was said to put a battery in their back, and boom, they're back at it again. And so for me, that's what kind of when I get text or I get a phone call or whatever, text now mostly. I'll get a text about maybe somebody that I had on the show and how something was said or they did something. You know, that's what does it for me. And so for you, what drives you to keep going even when maybe some of your clients are you know they ain't actually doing what you may want them to be doing that day, or because look, I understand how it goes, but for you, what is it that keeps you going, even when you may not necessarily want to keep going?
I would definitely say for me, it's really the passion. So I think for me, it's just like I had one woman tell me, you know, knowing what you don't like is just as important as knowing what you do like. So having done so many different jobs, I realized so quickly what I don't like. So I would say for me, it's just like this is something that fulfills me. I wake up in the morning, and it fulfills me and it makes me happy. I've had jobs, working with corporate companies where I made a lot of money and I was so unfulfilled. I was so dead inside. And then I've had jobs where maybe I wasn't making, I was just volunteering, or maybe I was making a little bit of money, but it fulfilled me. It gave me this purpose and this drive. And so when it comes to like art and culture, it's just something that it's truly what I'm passionate about. And I know without a shadow of a doubt, after trying so many different things in my life, that this is my calling.
And for those of you that are just tuning in, it's the Mind and Business podcast. We do this on Mondays, and today we have Miss Diane Wesh. She's hanging out with us today, and she has a company called Got Blacklisted. She has extensive travel and I guess sky points or airline miles. She's been all over the country, even to the point she at one time she worked as a whale watcher in Alaska. And to me, that's just amazing. I, with all the stuff that she's probably done, just the fact that she was a whale watcher in Alaska, uh, to me, that just it stands out. But so as far as what do you have? Where do you see yourself in 5 years?
Where I see myself in 5 years. Having my own physical location. Because I think my biggest difficulty lies in a space to have events. Because sometimes it gets old with always having to ask someone, oh, how much is the space? Is it available? X, Y, and Z. But like really having my own gallery and really like elevating, and uplifting Black artists.
And so, what would that take outside of maybe the financial aspect? What would it take in order for you to get your own space?
I think it would just take me narrowing down where I would see this first physical location being. And I believe I already know where it is.
Mhm.
Like it's going to be in New Zealand. So,
In New Zealand.
mhm.
Oh man. Well, listen. All I know is this: I've never really wanted to go to New Zealand, but I will say this: once you open your space, let me know so that I can grab me and my tribe, and we can come over there and see what this space really looks like.
Yes, please.
And yeah, please, it definitely. What would you say? What advice would you give outside of maybe getting out of your own area? Uh, if you can move or kind of get around some other people, what other advice would you give? And also, don't quit your day job. Have a successful side hustle.
Yes.
What would you say? What is the hardest lesson that you learned when it comes to entrepreneurship?
I think the hardest lesson I learned, I guess, was, you always see like the glitz and the glam of entrepreneurship, but
Mm-hmm.
very ever see someone speak upon the struggles of how they got there. Because sometimes you can see someone, they're like, oh, I just got a $2 million grant, but you don't see the 5 years that it took them to get that two
Yes.
million. And so often, especially when you look at social media, don't get wrapped up in that
Oh.
because it's not as transparent. So sometimes it's good for me to hear like, okay, yes, I got a $2 million grant, but during these 5 years, X, Y, and Z happened to me
Mm-hmm.
before I get this grant. So that's why I try not to get caught up in all of that. But I think that's like a really great lesson of just knowing that this is no easy,
Oh
road.
yeah, yeah. And to be honest with you, that is the whole premise of the show:
Hmm.
is to have these type of conversations with entrepreneurs, business owners, influencers, and creators. Having these conversations, the transparent ones, the ones where they talk about, hey, I was so focused on my business, I wasn't focused on my family, and they left. Or I started my business, but I was putting so much money into the business, I ended up losing my home. And these are the type of conversations that we want to have with future entrepreneurs so that they understand it's not about the glitz and the glam. It's not about what you may see on social media. Because to be honest with you, we don't know how many of those people on social media are really telling the truth at all.
Oh yeah.
We don't know. And then if you kind of model your life and your career path based on what you see on social media, you're gonna find yourself in a really bad spot.
Yes,
You know,
exactly.
really bad spot. And so, like I said, that is the whole point of the platform, the show itself. It's just so people understand. Hey, these are some of the headaches, some of the heartaches that some of these individuals have gone through, and we're trying to give you the tools to keep you from having to go through some of these same issues. And I used to hear this all the time, especially with younger people. You know, young people, if you're listening or you're watching, I'm just saying. A lot of times it's, when you would hear people say, I just want you to learn from my mistakes. But a lot of times they were like, well, I want to learn from making my own mistakes. Why? Like, you don't have to make the same mistake if you have someone here that is telling you, hey, this is what I did so that you don't have to. And so that's what the show is all about. Is just, hey, we're trying to prepare those the next generation of entrepreneurs, of business owners. We're just trying to prep them. And so highs and lows. It's something that we do towards the end of the show. Your highest high when it comes to this journey, this road of entrepreneurship, your highest high and your lowest low, and you can do either or.
Okay. My highest high would definitely be cultivating the community that I have now. You know, just being able to see them thrive and grow and prosper. Um, my lowest low was, I would say, when I started my first business, I think I dropped like 5 or 6K just on a website design, and innumerable hours on like trying to do copywriting, and I was so excited. I launched the business. 3 days later, COVID-19.
Oh,
All my money just
man.
basically down the drain on an entire website, from having a copywriter to a web designer, everything, because that business model was no longer going to work because of COVID-19. Yeah.
Well, how did you shake? How did you shake it? Like, how did you get out of that space? Like, how did you move forward? And how long did it take you to move forward?
So it didn't really, I've always just been like, overly ambitious and curious. And I love that though, overly curious. And for me, it was definitely like a huge hurt, but I kept everything, everything that I had learned, all the papers and research that I had already done. And like I said, again, it just simply helped me pivot to my business that I have now. Because had I not been through all of that, done everything, knew the importance of like having like a website presence and all this stuff, um, then I don't think I would have had the confidence to do what I'm doing now, or the courage to do what I'm doing now, to just say, let me just, and then also traveling really gave me the courage to be an entrepreneur. There are so many times I took like leaps of faith in all these different states and countries I went to, and it was just like, well, I feel like, I went to Alaska for only $300. I went to New Zealand with only $800 in my backpack. No job, no family, nothing. And so all of this like fortified my faith and courage to like say, okay, well, if and I use those examples, right? And for me, I always say testimony stirs faith. So um, when I saw, what I had gotten through, when I had very little, it was just like, there's only one way you can go when you're down, and it's up.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. And that's big. That's almost as big as failure is the fertile ground to growth. Almost as big. I don't
Um,
think it's as big. I don't think it's as big. That's that right there is yeah. And so with that, one of your goals you said you is to have your own space and have your own space in New Zealand within 5 years. What do you think? 2 years, 2 year goal.
2 year goal. I'd definitely say, so for me, I'm very strategic. I want to have my own space, but I also know I need to be mentored. So that's also one thing I want to know. Mentorship is the most profound thing in the world. If you can find someone who's willing to take the time to cultivate your character, please by all means do it. Even if you're volunteering, because for me, how I was able to move the way I'm moving was because I had a black woman in New Zealand. You know, her name was Dione Joseph, and so she actually created something called Black Creatives Aotearoa, and so she was trying to bring the black community together in New Zealand. This woman mentored me. She taught, basically, she imparted all her knowledge, all her years of knowledge onto me. So where she was just like, "Oh, have you ever done journalism?" And I'm just like, "No, never." So okay, well, I'll teach you. 3 months, she taught me journalism. You know, where my articles were getting featured by the Virginia Pilot Online, HuffPost. You know, and that was because this woman took her time to tell me, "Yeah, you could be a journalist. No, you don't need to do. You don't need to have 10 years of experience."
Mm-hmm.
There's so many times like society will make us feel as if we can't do a certain position
Right.
unless we have, but they have to also, but people also have to understand that that is a privilege. It is a privilege to be, even like, if you've been looking at like the art industry, it's predominantly white. You know, it's a privilege to be able to even get a foot in the door and to have 5 plus 10 plus years of experience in that space. So for me, like, my strategic move is to try to even get an entry level role in a gallery so I can learn, because of course, also getting money, getting a third party
Mm-hmm.
to funnel and invest into your business, but also to learn, right? Learn how to properly sustain a gallery. Learn the logistics, learn the the wording, and everything, just of what you can obtain from just being in that space, so that I can one day create my own and succeed.
Yeah, I've always said that having a mentor
Yes.
is probably one of the most important things an entrepreneur can have, and
Mhm.
a good mentor, a proven mentor,
Yes.
and someone that is willing to invest in you. Not and when I say invest, not just from the financial standpoint, but willing to invest time, now
Yes.
impart knowledge, wisdom, but then also they've got to possess that knowledge and wisdom themselves.
Hmm.
But I've always said that a mentor is probably, and to be honest with you, a mentor may be more important than money
Oh, I agree.
in
A
some
mentor is
instances.
money. It's financial currency.
Yeah,
It is.
yeah, it is. But I think that's one of the, I think for a lot of us, I think that's probably one of the hardest things to do is one, finding a mentor,
Mhm.
but then two, it's almost like, well, how do you ask someone to be your mentor?
I think sometimes that mentor can kind of find you, and sometimes someone could already have a mentor in their life, but they just don't know it yet that it's a mentor. And sometimes I would say for me, it's like, don't knock volunteering. And if you're going to volunteer for someone, make sure you're all in. Don't 25% this. Do it as if you were getting paid to do it. Because that's exactly how my mentor became my mentor. Because, like, I wasn't getting paid, but I worked extremely hard. And she saw that, she saw that hustle. And she said, okay, I'm going to keep nurturing this relationship. I'm going to keep, cultivating this woman's character, and keep, challenging me to step outside of my comfort zone. And she did all of this during COVID-19, during lockdown. So
And I think that's the other thing is the fact that a lot of people think, well, because it's volunteer,
Hmm.
and I'm not getting paid, well, if
Hmm.
I show up at 9:05 instead of 9 o'clock, it'll be okay.
Yeah.
I'm not getting paid I'm not getting paid anyway. It just, but once again, you know, people see that and they recognize that, one way or the other, neither the positive aspect or the negative aspect of your character. And like you said, because, once again, mentorship is probably the most important tool
Yes.
when it comes to, but not even in just entrepreneurship, but just life in general.
Right. Hmm.
Just life in general, because it can help you so much. It can really help you so much. But look, I want to say thank you very much for this evening.
Yeah.
I
You're welcome.
appreciate your time, your energy, because one thing that we know about entrepreneurship, time also is probably one of the most important things that we have, because it's the one thing that we can't get back.
Yes.
And so for you taking the time to hop on here with us, have the conversation, I appreciate it. I hope the viewers and the listeners appreciate it as well. And what I'll do is I'll link people to your page, so that
Hmm.
that way they can, get in contact with you, see what you're doing, follow you, all of those things, because we want to stay up to what you may have going on in the next couple. Matter of fact, what do you have coming up in, say, the next couple of weeks or so?
So actually, I've been taking like this past few weeks and going forward, just resting. I've really just been resting, and it's helped me out so much, even creatively. Because sometimes, also, when you sit in silence, things come to you, and it just realigns you. So I'm kind of just resting and relaxing. I think towards the end of the year, I'm going to try to work with the artist I manage and have his solo exhibition to kind of wrap up the year. But other than that, it's just a lot of rest and relaxing.
Look, I need to try that myself. One of these
Yeah.
days, one of these days, it's gonna happen. I don't know when, but that piece we'll definitely figure out. But yes, I do. I really appreciate your time
Yes.
and the
Thank you for.
conversation. Yeah, and I really appreciate the conversation. And but once again, I'll link everybody so they can get in touch with you. So if you hold on for me just a minute. All right, once again, you guys, that's Miss Diane Wesh of Got Blacklisted. She decided to come hang out with us and drop some jewels. Failure is the fertile ground to growth. Don't forget it. I'm probably going to use that tomorrow. The next day, the next day, the next day, because it's important, and it's really something to think about. I appreciate you guys for tuning in and hanging out with us this evening. Once again, it's the Mind Your Business podcast, powered by Hanging with the Harrisons, and we do this on just about every Monday. So you can catch it on Monday live, or you can actually catch the replay on Wednesdays at 11 a.m. if you just so happen to miss it on our YouTube channel. So make sure you like, subscribe it, so that way you can get all the notifications when we have a new show that pops up. So once again, I appreciate you guys. We'll do this again next Monday, and we'll talk real soon. But listen, you guys, just continue to do what it is that you want to do. Follow your dreams. Don't let anybody talk you out of it. But just keep on working and keep on pushing. Make that jump. Make that jump. If you haven't made it, let's start tomorrow. Matter of fact, let's start tonight. Go ahead and start. Don't let your dreams die, because it's a dream for a reason. You have that dream and that vision for a reason. So let's work at it, you guys. So that's what it is, man. My Business Podcast. I'm JB Harrison, and we will talk real soon, man. Y'all have a good evening.